everyone, today we're going to be talking about the backwards and side-to-side marching techniques. Like all of the marching we're going to do, these will both be straight leg marching techniques. But where these differ from the forwards marching technique is that these two are both platform marching, which refers to the part of your feet that you stand on as you move across the field. Before we go into the techniques themselves, I have a couple cultivation exercises I want to introduce to you so that we can create some reference points for what our legs should look like as we march. Alright, so the first exercise we're going to be talking about is platform replacements. We're going to use this to understand what ankle flexion feels like. Now, what is ankle flexion? Well, in short, it is the flexion of your ankle, and what you can do to understand this feeling really easily is we got our feet squarely beneath us. We're just going to lift up our toes. Lift up our toes. Feel some engagement along the back of the leg, and the bottom of your shoe to your leg should be creating about a right angle. Cool. So before we jump into the whole exercise, we're going to do a little primer for the primer, and we're going to practice standing ankle flexion with one foot connected wholly to the ground. So what I want you to do, put all your body weight into your right leg to start, and then just bring your left toes up to the sky. Same thing, opposite leg, weights in the left leg, right toes up to the sky. That is ankle flexion, and this shape is referred to as a flexed foot. Now for the actual exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to come up all the way up to our releve, and we're going to sink back down to where our platforms are fully in contact with the ground. This is the toes and the balls of your feet. There is still space between the heels and the ground. The heels do not touch the ground. Not now, not ever in this technique of marching. So what we're going to do here is that same thing, lifting the toes up to the sky, one at a time, and feeling what this motion feels like. Because this bending at our ankles, allows us to slide across the top of the grass or the turf without bending our knee. So it is important that we learn to cultivate this motion. Try it out for yourselves. Okay, the next exercise we're going to do is called sticky feet. This is going to get us used to leading our motion with the back of our knee and moving our leg into the back space without bending our leg. What you're going to want to do is, this is really simple, stand in parallel, feet squarely underneath you, and just slide your feet back across the ground. Full contact with the ground from the bottom of your shoe the whole time. So my heel's not going up, toes aren't going up. We're just acting like our feet are stuck to the ground, so that we can start to understand what it feels like to move our legs horizontally, especially the knee. We want to only see the knee move horizontally when we're marching backwards, boop, 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 not doing any movement vertically. It stays in this shape as we travel across the field. Again, super easy exercise, but do this a bunch. It's very effective because it is a very direct reference of what your legs should feel like as you're marching. All right, last exercise we're going to show you guys before we get into some actual marching is called leg swings. This is going to help you to understand how your leg, specifically the head of your femur, moves in relationship to your hip joint as you swing your leg back into the back plane. You're going to want to do this if you can next to a chair or a countertop. I have my wonderful fence right here. I'm going to put my hand up on top of it. So what you're going to do, feet will be in parallel here. I'll start with the right foot. Foot's going to be out in front of me. We're going to make sure it is flexed. We're going to make sure it is parallel and not turned out. We want it to stay this way the whole time we're doing this. We want to make sure it's parallel, and we also want to make sure that it is in track, which means it's just a straight line, swinging like a pendulum. None of this. Not yet, we'll get to that. But for now, just in a straight line. So here we go. What's out in front? Going to flex, and we're going to go back, forth, feeling how our leg moving in relation to our hip socket. Cool. Second leg. Out in front. Flex that foot. Well, I'm going to kick my nose. Out in front. Flex that foot. And back, forth, parallel and in track, parallel and in track. And that is the exercise. This can also really help to cultivate that same leg shape maintenance that we were working with sticky feet. Try it out. So now it is time to use the references we just identified in our cultivation exercise and build up our actual backwards technique. So what you're going to do, we're going to stand at attention. I'm going to get into a good place here first. Fist between the arches of the feet, space in between each vertebrae. We're pushing down through our feet and lifting up with our abs. Building up all the correct points of posture. Now what we're going to do to march backwards, we're going to first use the ankle flexion that we cultivated with the platform replacements. We're going to flex that ankle. And as we do that, we're going to use the leg shape and hip mobility that we identified in sticky feet and hip swings to move our leg into the back space. 5, 6, 7, body weight's in the right leg, and we're going. 5, 6, 7, push and go. Cool. Make sure that we're keeping the heels nice and low, as we defined in the platform replacements. I harp on this a lot, because if your heels are too high, not only will you get an elevation change in your upper body when you march, but keeping your heels really high off the ground leads to some bent legs. Like, there's not a lot of ways that you can get to this position if you're not bending your leg at least a little bit. So, in context, what that's going to look like is alright. So, we still have to figure out how we're going to move side to side across the field. And the biggest difference between how we do our backwards marching and how we do that is that when we're marching side to side, which is also known as crab stepping, we're going to cross our legs over one another. So our hips and pelvis are always remaining parallel to either the front sideline, if you play the quads or the snare drum, or parallel to the in zone, if you're a bass drummer. As we cross our legs over one another, we want to keep enough space in between our feet that the heel of the leg in front just barely clears your shoe that you're wearing on the leg and back. We don't want to have our feet too close. We don't want to have our feet too far apart. Both of those tendencies are going to make marching efficiently way, way harder. And another note for crabbing is that you're going to cross over in front with the leg that is opposite the direction that you are traveling. So if I'm traveling to the left, I'm going to have an open step first. My left foot, I'm going to cross over with my right leg. Left, right, left, right. The opposite being my right leg, opposite of the direction I'm traveling. Left is the leg that's crossing over. Same thing with traveling to the right. Our first step, because we always start marching on the left foot, is going to be a crossover step with the left, because that's the opposite foot of the direction we're traveling. And the second step is going to be an open step with the right. Same thing all the way down. Watch out as you're marching that you're really pressing down into your platforms so that you're getting that feeling of opposition. You're pushing down through your feet so you can lift up out of your hips so you can keep your legs straight. A lot of times what we see is people will let the weight bear down into their hips and we'll get this kind of crabbing. That's not great for a multitude of reasons, but the main ones being it's not very efficient and it's not the leg shape that we want. Speaking of the leg shape that we want, we can use all of the same tools of cultivation that we identified for the backwards march, the platform replacements for ankle flexion, the sticky feet, and the leg swings for keeping that leg shape as our leg moves. We can use them and apply them to this technique, except now we're just operating in our hip socket this way instead of this way. And in context, that's going to look something like this.